I'd like to start this evening, if we could all rise and honor our country and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remove your hats if you have them on. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. During the week prior to 2014 Boston Marathon, if you tuned in to the news broadcast, they would all be running remarkable stories of the bombing survivors. In the interviews, we heard of the strength they received because of the constant support of family, friends, and especially community. They all came together as Boston Strong. It shouldn't take such a tragedy, such as the Boston Marathon bombing of 2013, to bring together a country and a town. My hope is that we are influenced by these examples, put our differences aside, and build our community. The purpose of this evening's program is to enlighten the voters of the town of Templeton of who the candidates are, the office they hope to be elected to, and what they can offer if elected to the positions they seek. Each candidate was sent a personal invitation with an RSVP to attend this event. This is the way the evening is designed to flow. Each candidate will be introduced to you, as well as what position they are seeking. The candidate will be asked to make a brief presentation. Following the presentation, they do have the option to receive questions from the audience. It's not necessary. Candidates may make themselves available for questions following the formal presentations during a time of fellowship and refreshments. If a candidate decides to take questions, please keep them directed towards what that candidate has presented to you and to you by the candidate. Questions to each candidate will channel through me as conducted, similar to town meetings. Also, I request that if you have questions, you identify yourself to the general audience. As I have stated, this evening was designed as an informational meeting, not for mudslinging. After all, our ultimate goal is that what we are seeking is what is best for the town of Templeton, and how should I vote on May 5th, 2014. We will start this evening's presentation with a presentation from our town administrator, Bob Markel. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me, or should I use the microphone? You can hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. I've been the interim town administrator here since February, and I'll be here until the Board of Selectmen hire a permanent town administrator. And all of us have been working together to try and grapple with the financial problems that the town faces. Some of you, or many of you, may have seen part of this before if you went to the town meeting. If you haven't, I recommend you go back and get a stiff drink before I get into this. There's some unwelcome parts of this. Here's where we stand. Change the slide. Okay. I'll tell you how we got there and where we are at the present. We are required, like every city and town in the Commonwealth, to report twice a year to the State Department of Revenue. We're supposed to issue a tax recap, which we do. Go back. The two reports that we are required: tax rate recap, normally filed at the beginning of a fiscal year, and Schedule A, filed at the end. If you don't file the tax rate recap showing that you have a balanced budget, which is legally required in Massachusetts of all cities and towns, they won't let you set a tax rate, and you can't send out tax bills. That's been a problem in the current year. And secondly, if you don't do at the end of the year Schedule A, they will not certify your free cash, which is a Massachusetts term, which means basically any surplus that you had in the prior year budget, or actually it's an accumulation of surpluses in prior years. Now, how could we possibly have a surplus? Some departments just can't spend all the money that they were given in the budget. Maybe they were going to buy a vehicle, and maybe the vehicle didn't come in until July when they had hoped to buy the vehicle in May. So the money that was allocated in that fiscal year isn't spent. But most of the time, you get free cash because your receipts from fees and charges are typically estimated low, and you get more than you anticipate. For dog licenses, plumbing permits, building permits, and so forth, where a fee is charged by a town department. And so they typically underestimate or be conservative about those fees, and that money comes in and becomes part of your free cash for next year. Free cash means you can do anything with it you want. Most communities look to free cash to make smaller capital purchases. Free cash is considered one time, and it's recommended that you spend it on one-time purchases and not expenses that recur every year like a salary. So anyway, you need free cash certified, and if you don't do it, they send you a letter like the town received in March of this year saying, we're going to cut off your state aid. That's all state aid, including school aid, as well as aid to the general government if you don't file the Schedule A. Okay, so we go forward. The problems here extend through 3 fiscal years, 13, 14, the current year, and 15. New Year's Day for cities and towns is July 1. So this coming July 1, we bounce over into fiscal 15, currently in 14. We'll go through the 13 issues quickly here. Schedule A wasn't filed with the Department of Revenue, and free cash was not certified. Schedule A wasn't filed because the financial management people at Town Hall have seen a great deal of turnover. The accountant, treasurer, and so forth, we've had this turnover, and frankly, the data that they had in the accounting system was not reliable. And so we didn't have cash reconciliation done properly, and also entries to the general ledger, meaning the accounting system, were not being done correctly or properly. And that problem, by the way, is being solved, but still isn't resolved after quite some time, because clearly a lot needed to be done when the new accountant took over about a month ago. Okay, so fiscal 13, next slide please. The town hired last November a forensic accountant to come in and assist in updating the financial data. And as I said, the Department of Revenue threatened to cut off state aid if we didn't file by the 14th of March. Next slide, please. Schedule A was filed exactly on 14th March. It was a close call. And the Department of Revenue certified free cash on March 28th. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, that's what they certified. It's a negative balance of $26,000. So if you look back over time, the town has had as much as $1.3 million in free cash certified, but it's one time. It goes up and goes down. It's not predictable. And this year, the unusual situation, this is the letter, by the way, from the Department of Revenue, the unusual situation, $26,000 in the hole, which the town had to cover from the town's reserve fund, called stabilization fund, at the March 29th special town meeting. Next slide. Now, we're into fiscal 14, and here's the way it has played out. It was discovered that there's a $505,000 gap in the budget for the current year, $505,000 gap, largely because the data that was used was not reliable, and the model that was used to prepare the budget was not a good model. And so this was discovered as a fundamental problem. Well, how do you fill the gap? By the way, again, we have to have a balanced budget. And so that gap has to be filled. Next slide, please. And the tax recap can't be submitted until you can show that you have a balanced budget. So we didn't submit a tax recap last August it should have gone in. It wasn't submitted because the budget turned out to be out of balance. Because the tax rate hasn't been certified, no tax bills have been sent out. No tax bills have been sent out for the third and fourth quarters. The first and second quarters were sent out, but they were estimated bills. And the standard way to do it is you do your tax recap in August, the Board of Selectmen meet in November or December, and they set a tax rate, and then you send out the true tax bill at the end of December for the third quarter and the fourth quarter. But it hasn't been done, leading to, not surprisingly, a cash flow problem for the town government. Next slide, please. Cash flow problem. The town was forced to borrow $2.5 million to pay its bills. That was done in January. That note comes due on the 15th of May. It'll have to be rolled over, but the state also requires that any temporary borrowing has to be covered by the end of the fiscal year. So the town has a $2.5 million borrowing. We've got to get cash in the door in order to cover that $2.5 million, they call it tax anticipation note, by the end of the fiscal year. Okay. Here's the three ways that every community, every state balances a budget and closes a gap. You can reduce the budget, make cuts. You can use one-time revenue if you have it, and we have two kinds of revenue there, free cash and the stabilization fund, which is the reserve of the town. The town has, last I looked, I think $103,000 in the stabilization fund for additional taxes. Reducing budgets, well, that is underway. The select board mandated a 5% reduction in all operating budgets of all departments on the 27th of January. Those cuts are going to be implemented at the annual town meeting on May 17th. Because town meeting votes budgets, and to make it official, selectmen can simply say do it, but to make it official, the town meeting has to cut those budgets. So we'll have a list for you at the annual town meeting of cuts. It's about $148,000 in cuts, and that's cutting to the bone. Surprise, no free cash. You can use free cash to cover that $505,000 deficit, but the town doesn't have any this year. And that itself is, I think, the most important lesson into the future. You don't want to use free cash to cover your operations. It should be used for one-time purchases. Example might be, you have a mortgage every month that you have to pay, let's say it's $500 a month. Your paycheck, which is recurring, allows you to pay $500 a month. Your mortgage goes up to $750 a month, but your pay doesn't go up. Your recurring revenue doesn't go up, but you win the lottery. You say, hey, I'm just going to pay my mortgage with the lottery. Well, you pay it that month, and next month you still have lottery money to pay. So it's just not a good idea. Not a good idea to use free cash. Many communities do, but obviously you can get into big trouble, and that basically is what we're talking about now. Okay, good. And also, if we had one-time revenue, and we spent the one-time revenue to cover $505,000, you're still short the next year, because the deficit in the town is a so-called structural deficit. It recurs every year. It developed several years ago, and the town has been plugging the gap with free cash. And it all works as long as you have free cash. So the gap would again exist next year. So not a good idea. As I said, structural deficit, permanent, recurring every year. And it's been patched over with the use of free cash. Here's the chart. This is what has happened in recent years. 2007, The town used $784,000 in free cash to balance a budget of roughly $4 million. 08, $400,000. Notice the difference. Notice how it fluctuates. To cover $3 million, 6. 09, the town had $665,000. Again, a $4 million 8 budget, and so on. Here, $882,000 in free cash was used to cover and balance a $5.1 million budget. Here's I think, the hard truth. You can cover this by one, you can cover your structural deficit by permanent reductions in costs and services to the public or taxes. On the May 5th election, the town meeting approved by a vote of 224 to 49. Town meeting approved, and the selectmen have approved and proposed a general override of the Prop 2.5 tax cap of $505,000 in additional taxes. Here are the tax rates currently and what will happen. The town's tax rate was $14.60 per $1,000 of valuation. In 2012, it went down to $14.12. Why? Because the senior center debt exclusion was paid off. So you go above the cap for a debt exclusion, you pay it off, your tax rate drops. So it dropped back to here. Last fall, the town adopted a $620,000 override, overwhelmingly for the schools, and so that's going to raise it back up again to $1,526. And if a $505,000 override is agreed to on the May 5th election, tax rate would go to $16.20. It might go a penny or two either side, but that's where we are at this point. Now, having been in government for a while, I'm well aware that when people are asked for more money, first question that comes up at every town meeting, what are you doing to try and cope with the problem besides just asking us for more money? So I just want to finish up here with just a couple of things that are going on. I will tell you this, that I think there is a very capable financial management team now in place. We have a town accountant who's working 20 hours a week. He's a certified public accountant. And I think if you watch the selectmen meeting Monday night or ask anyone who's been to those meetings, he knows what he's doing. And he is repairing the general ledger. And I think in a matter of a couple months, the town can be assured that good financial data will be coming out of that office for use by the treasurer, for use by the Board of Selectmen, and the school system. We won't have more of this chaos that we've had. There's a warrant article on the May 17th town meeting to urge treasurers and collectors' offices, which will provide some savings over time. There's also, you may want to talk with the Finance Committee, there's active discussions underway of other consolidations which will save the town money and reduce the need for, frankly, for personnel. We're going to be selling liens on tax delinquent properties. And the method we're going to use, and this is going to happen in the early part of May, those tax delinquent properties where liens have been filed at the registry in Worcester will be shown to a number of private companies who buy them. They pay you the tax that's due and the interest that's due, and then they collect the taxes, and that's their business. We expect a couple of bidders to come out. The town is owed over $700,000 in back taxes, much of it for that factory, that American Tissue. We're not going to collect that. But the town might be able to get $200,000 to $300,000 in back taxes collected, which will go into the treasury and be the basis of free cash next year. And it'll replenish so-called reserve. The select board have appointed a tax title custodian to sell property that the town owns, which was foreclosed over the years. There are 5 properties that have been foreclosed. I think it's generally agreed that the town doesn't want to be and doesn't need to be a landowner. And furthermore, when you sell these parcels, they go back on the tax rolls and they start producing revenue. Not a whole lot, but it's better than holding on to properties. There's also an effort underway to sell the property at 252 Balderville Road, which should bring in a substantial amount of revenue. That I guess at one time was considered for a new town hall, but the price tag for that seemed to be well over $3 million, not something that could happen in the short run. And so the decision was to me to prepare to sell that. So every position is being evaluated. Reduced the staff in the Board of Selectmen's office by 1. Not exactly a popular decision, but there were 2 people there. Now there's 1. So we're trying to make do with less staffing as well. I think we have another slide. We're done. The selectmen have recently made a decision to move the town offices, which we are renting for $48,000 a year, and where the owner wants $78,000 for a new 3-year lease, which would include more space, by the way, another 4,000 square feet. But nevertheless, the selectmen made the decision we're moving to East Templeton Elementary School in order to save rent money. And obviously, we'll be able eventually to consolidate all town offices in that one building, where there's plenty of space. It needs some work, but we're also paying for some town offices in outlying buildings, and you're paying utilities and heat, light, and so forth. So those costs will also go away when all the offices of the town will be consolidated into that building. We're going to bid contracts with service providers, and yet with all of that, you can see if we took every dime we had, let's take $148,000 in cuts, add $100,000 and strip the town's reserves, you're still only halfway to the $500,000 deficit. There's a big downside to taking the stabilization fund and using it in that manner. There you have it. That's what's going to be on. That's what's going to be on the ballot for May 5th. I think that's the end. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Bob Columbus, 17 Main Street, Powder River. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
On that slide that you showed in regards to the past years of using free cash and so forth, are you saying that's a direct result of the current shortfall now?
No, I'm saying that when you use free cash, at one point, 19% of the spending was covered with free cash. Because free cash fluctuates, you saw on that chart, and suddenly you can lose it. If you have recession and so forth, you end up, as the town has this year, $26,000 in the hole, rather than having $400,000 or $500,000 to use. And so it's risky to do that. And you could end up with the financial situation like the town has currently. So this deficit, this shortfall, has existed for a number of years, going back to the last decade, and it's just been patched over year by year.
Yes, but that, I agree, but it doesn't have anything directly to do with the $505,000 shortfall currently.
Directly, no. No.
Thank you, because on one of your earlier slides, you mentioned that there was improper data going in.
Yeah, right.
So wouldn't you agree with you that be the main reason why we have the shortfall we have now?
I think it's hard to answer that directly, because I would say that in 2008, 9, 10, 11, the use of free cash meant there was a deficit. the recurring revenue wasn't enough to cover all the spending. And so the deficit or the shortfall has existed for a number of years. And just how this I wasn't here, but I know that the data, I can tell you that the data coming out of the financial offices was very poor when I arrived here. And as I said, the new accountant, new treasurer collector, and treasurer collector, they're trying to improve the quality of the data, and they're doing it. So whether we say it was bad data or whether we say, you know, if you look back every year, there's been this gap, which has been filled by one-time revenue. It's been a reality for a number of years that the town doesn't have enough revenue for property taxes and state aid and all those revenues that recur every year to cover the level of spending.
Yeah, I agree, but what the data that some of the data that I saw, for some reason this past fiscal year, the average receipts went from, like, say, 1 or 1.2 million up to 2.2 million. So why, to me, that's a red flag that the receipts jumped up over $500,000 in one fiscal year. So that right there would be another piece of the puzzle of bad data. Don't you agree?
I agree.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm kind of concerned about next year. Now, this is just going to get us through this year. What's going to happen next year?
Well, if there is an override, I've said, you know, I think what the people at Town Hall should say is this is it.
Well, what's happening?
We're not going to ask for any more. Next year, you have an additional 505 to help you balance next year's budget. On top of that, there are new revenues that come in the range of, what, 200,000, well, about 200,000 in additional revenue because the state aid goes up, the additional property tax goes up. So it's not going to be easy, but you're not going to have a crisis. You won't have a crisis next year. It'll be tight. But there will be roughly 700,000 plus in new revenue next year without asking for additional tax overrides. You know, I would say the town has to make do with it and continue trying to save money and not, you know, not spend money renting property, not have offices scattered around, consolidate and do whatever you can to make it work.
I got another question. Now, you're talking about going into these type of school. Now, you're not going to be able to go into that school right away. How are they going to?
They have some questions on the ballot for the town to repair the roof, replace the heating system, and we would we're going to try and recruit a workforce to work on the various rooms. It needs some repainting and so forth. And recommended to me to call the Worcester County Sheriff. I know sheriffs all across the Commonwealth provide a labor force, and they can do very good work. So I think the prospect is that we can get substantial improvement in the interior of that building without spending a lot of money.
My question is whether they're going to get the money to buy this material to do it with. That's because I was understanding that the only money they're going to get is for the roof and the furnace.
Yeah. Well, there will be, the rent is $48,000, but in the budget it's $52,000. Moving from the current building over would free up that money. Now, whether you want to spend it all or not, probably not. But some of that money could be used in the first year to do the repaint and make the cosmetic improvements on the interior.
Yeah, but that money won't be available until July 1st. Am I correct?
Correct, yes.
And we're going to be out of it by July 1st.
The plan is to get out of there, and the plan is to move, and
Well, I just can't understand how they can do it.
it is going to be messy. They're asking for transfers from the stabilization fund to support some of these changes that have to be made in the building. If town meeting votes from the stabilization fund in, in May, that money is available right away.
So there you go, taking the money again away from stuff.
Ken.
Ken Robinson, Old North Road. What will, if the override does not pass, what will be the practical impact on that to the average homeowner?
Well, did everybody hear that question?
No.
If the override doesn't pass, what will be the impact on the homeowner?
The Department of Revenue, as I said, requires every city and town to have a balanced budget. Plan B, as we call it, provides that, and I've been in touch, Ken's been in touch with the Department of Revenue. They are preparing deficit legislation. That is, it would be a bill that would go through the legislature that would permit the town to borrow from the state to cover that deficit. And then we would have to pay it's a loan. The loan would have to be paid back over a period of years. That might seem superficially attractive. However, what comes along with that is pretty much a financial straitjacket from the Department of Revenue. And it would be very likely that they would probably send a control board here, as they did to Springfield and Chelsea and Lawrence. But any kind of spending would have to be cleared on the telephone with the Department of Revenue. And a lot of the so-called non-essential services would be cut severely. I think if you asked anyone, and I know quite a few from Springfield, what the experience was when the control board came in, no one liked it. Not only the people in the government, but the citizens didn't like it because they have authority to simply slash costs and reduce services in order to make the ends meet and have enough money to pay back the loans. So that's Plan B.
Okay. Paul Kane. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you very much for the work you've done for this town. Since you've been here, you've been able to look back. Your term at some point will end, ours will not.
Yes.
We have to look more into the future, but I know that you've also attacked the plan that you presented to us in that fashion also. In your estimation, excuse me, have we been more undertaxed or more over budgeted in our errors in dealing with the economics of the town in the past? And how can we best avoid this moving forward in the future?
I'll answer the last question first, and I think the way to avoid the issues that the town now faces in the future is to make sure that you have competent people managing the finances of the town and providing information to the state as well as to the people who make decisions at the town meeting and the select board. And the key people are your treasurer, your collector, and your town accountant, and your town administrator. The town administrator manages those people. And so those are the key players. And the answer to your question, is it more undertax or more overspending? Frankly, I don't see a lot of overspending. If you visit the highway garage, you see vehicles, trucks and so forth that are very old. I see I don't see people sitting in offices and not having something to do. The staffing here is, you can always improve it. And I think that's really what needs to happen. You need to reduce it wherever possible. But I don't think it's so much overspending. I think it's just that the town developed a spending plan a number of years ago that provided services that everybody wanted, and there wasn't enough recurring revenue. And here's another problem. I mean, frankly, you say, what's been the result of Proposition 2.5? Prop 2.5 bears down most heavily on small communities like this where you don't have a big industrial or commercial sector. If you look at other places, cities for example, we look at Boston, they have a huge commercial sector that is growing and producing new revenue every year, or an industrial sector. And so communities that are primarily residential have had the toughest time with Prop 2.5 because new revenue doesn't come from new commercial growth, it comes out of the homeowner. And that's a sad reality. I don't have an answer to that. I'm sure people don't want to just open the doors, if they could, and let the town be developed willy-nilly by every fast food restaurant and whatever else. They don't want that. You see a lot of communities that have this sort of unattractive commercial strip on the edge of town where they have that's tax-producing business. Templeton doesn't, I haven't found it at least, if it's here. I don't think it's here. So if you don't have a significant commercial or industrial base to pay the taxes and which can grow and expand to give you new taxes, it all comes out of you. And I don't know that I ever thought about it that way, but I've seen that in other smaller communities, that's really the most negative impact of the tax cap. So,
Thank you.
so I don't want to, I was on the ballot 10 times in Springfield. I won 9 elections, and now they have to be punished. But I don't want to interfere too much with the candidates tonight here. Okay.
Mary.
I just was wondering, the budget that we need for the 500,000, what is the school doing for the next fiscal year? And how will that play an effect in is that included in what the school's doing? Or do you even know what the school is planning on?
The school's asking for $145,000 next year. I think going forward, one of the things that is a pattern in many communities in Massachusetts is that school expenses increase faster than the town's revenue increases. Every year, this community will get 2.5% or up to 3% probably in new money, in new revenue. Well, if your school assessment comes in at 4%, how do you make that work? The only way you make that work is to squeeze the other departments. Now, I'm not anti-school. I mean, I'm very much pro-school. Like wife was a teacher. But, again, looking for balance going forward, that has to be part of it. And you have to look at basically compensation there, because that's what's the driver is compensation, total compensation. You have to look at that. And the next town administrator should attend the bargaining sessions for a new contract and make sure that the compensation package stays within bounds. That's tricky. And what you're going to hear on the other side is, frankly, if you don't keep pace with communities in the region in terms of what you pay your teachers, then you're going to lose teachers to other communities. So it's tough, it's tricky, but I think the basic math is you can't have increases in any department that exceed what the average increase in revenue is every year. And if they do, the only way you can make that work is to give this department 4% and squeeze everybody else to make up the difference. So that's part of it.
That just brings to mind Martin Haley, South Road. It's not a very good subject, probably nobody wants to hear it, but it brings to mind that, and I see this happening, it's true that the town is outspending the population as far as what we can give them for taxes. Especially, and I'm going to say it, it's the elderly and the fixed income in town. They're really hurting because they're on fixed incomes, of course, and they can't afford it. And another thing is why you don't see a lot of elderly people at town meetings is their pride won't let them get up and say, I can't give you any more money.
Yeah.
They'll go to the ballot and don't give you any money, but somehow, somewhere, I think there's gotta be, it's the way of the whole world, I suppose, but somewhere there's gotta be a cutoff point where we just can't give you any more. So, you know, try not to ask for a lot more, you know, do with what you got. I'm of the opinion that I think you ought to freeze wages and prices for a while and pay down some debt. That may be not a popular thing to do, but we're piling debt upon debt, and a good part of this community cannot afford it.
I understand that. I've had people
Thank you.
say, I think you're right about all the financial issues, but I can't afford to give you more. So you're right, I don't disagree with you,
Yeah,
but I can't afford more.
Yeah, right.
People say that.
Yeah.
The way 2.5 was supposed to work is that the state was supposed to step in and provide revenue to all the cities and towns every year that would give them more than they could get just from raising property.
Yeah, I get it, but they're not.
And that hasn't been happening.
Yeah, right. All right.
Thank you.
Vamsi? Thank you. I think this is a very interesting presentation. I think that we are maybe missing one very, very important thing. Because what happens in the coming weeks is going to determine if we are going to regain our faith in our town political field. Are we going to believe in the administration of the Board of Selectmen and the rest of the financial group? We have to remember that we voted a $620,000 override. Bingo, people voted there. And very shortly afterwards, all of a sudden, we needed over $500,000 more that no one seemed to mention earlier. So it's easy to understand why a lot of people are very hesitant in believing what is being presented. One of the key things that was presented this evening was the fact of the $505,000 override and how it would affect our tax rate. Very well done. But I think there's a more important figure that has to be presented to us this evening. And the gentleman who has made a presentation is the one who has the knowledge and the qualification to tell us. I saw a printout from the Department of Revenue. Now, I'm sure they got their figures from the town of Templeton. So they maybe were incorrect, I don't know. But when they show the recapitulate, the tax levy sheet for F13 and F14, the difference in the levy limit, amended levy limit, was a little bit over $1 million. Now, I don't know if that figure was correct or not. Maybe the Department of Revenue didn't have the correct figures. Well, if those figures are correct, and we're looking at approximately a 90-cent increase for $500,000, then that alone would increase our tax rate by about $1.80 or so. So what we need, so then we have to add on the 505 if we vote the override. And what we as taxpayers have to have from the town administration is exactly what the final number is. For one to say that if you vote the 505,000, it would increase 90 cents. Very well, that's good. But what is the final amount? Are the figures that I saw from the Department of Revenue incorrect? I don't know.
I can tell you that the override in the fall,
Tax rate is going to be.
the override in the fall added $1.12. The proposed override would add 93 cents.
All right.
So that it would be the two together, both together. That would impact your
So
taxes.
what would be the final tax rate
At the school.
if,
About $16.20.
That doesn't exclude the school.
that's only $2?
Pardon me? That would,
If you have this discrepancy of $1 million, and you add 500, what would that do for the tax rate?
and it's $540,000 equals $1 on the tax rate,
Yeah.
approximately. So,
So if you've got a $1 million differential between F-13 and F-14 as it stands before we vote the 505, aren't we approaching $3 increase?
no, the rates, I think one of those slides had the rates. It went down to $14.12,
That's for F-13.
and then it went up in 13, I'm sorry, it went up in 14
To what?
by $1.12. For the override that was added last fall, and it would add 93 more cents,
Right.
500. I just want to say this generally, though. I'm going to say this generally. Given the problems and the frustration and the tax burden that people can't possibly welcome, if there's anything that can be said positively towards the future, and remember, I'm leaving, I don't have any vested interest here. I'm retired in Massachusetts, I can only earn a certain amount of money, and I have to stop. So the next town administrator is going to have to deal with this, but I see a board of selectmen that are working to try and fix the problems. We don't have a lot of conflict, disagreement. I mean, I've deliberately tried to ignore the past. I'm not part of that, and I want to be involved with it. But I see people who are sincerely trying to make the best decisions for the town. I can guarantee you that there's a financial staff now that are capable of doing the job and are doing the job. And so some of those problems of bad data and so forth, being unable to file forms because the Department of Revenue would kick things back, wouldn't accept. That's over. So going forward, and thirdly, there's no attempt, at least I'm not aware of any attempt, to hide anything. And this is the truth as best we can tell it. There's no secret agenda, and there's no interest in, my interest basically, and I think everybody else, let's get all the basic information out to the residents, let them make a decision as to where they want to go in the future, but just lay it out there and be straightforward about it. That's what we're trying to do here. So I think there can be a better future for the town. It can be very much a brighter future for the town if they can get past this particular crisis. And it's going to require some money. I wish there were another way, but I don't see it. So I don't know. Yes.
Hi, Dawn Benoit, Gristmill Crossing. I was wondering if the override does not pass and worst case scenario, a control board comes in. You talked about them having the authority to cut non-essential services. Do they have the authority to raise taxes?
They can't raise taxes. They can make cuts. Any kind of tax increases have to be approved by town meeting and endorsed by the Board of Selectmen. What they'll do is, okay, we don't have enough tax money, we will make cuts, and they don't exclude the schools, they don't exclude anybody. And also, if you look at in the other communities where they've had this, and I don't expect a control board, I expect control from Boston, but they won't, I mean, this is a small community, they're not going to send in a team like they did in Springfield 10 years ago, and basically run the town, run the city. They won't do that. But there'll be control. And it will affect everything, including some essential services. They would preserve public safety, police, fire, and dispatch, as much as possible, but there might be cuts there as well. Goodwill.
Well, the other thing that I think some folks alluded to is that you've talked about the 2 overrides. There's another question for the schematic drawing that's a debt exclusion, and people want to know what the impact of that is on the tax rate for this particular year.
Debt exclusion for, which one are you talking about?
Elementary
The school. For the school, the 500.
Oh, well, that's $1.
What's another dollar, right?
Yeah.
For 1 year.
$540,000 is $1 on the tax rate.
For 1
You're
year.
talking
For 1 year.
less than $1.
Yes.
If that's what it is. No, the other thing is, I mean, I didn't mention the advisory board. We work with them every day. They're trying their best. If you haven't tuned in, there's some very capable people on that advisory, serious people who ask serious questions. And whatever the past has been, I think the people are now in place to run the government efficiently and effectively and avoid troubles like this.
And I would just like to say, I don't believe there's an override for the school. There's a debt exclusion for the schematic, 60% of which will be reimbursed by the MSBA. And then the other thing is the new wood chip furnace for the complex at the middle and high school. And that also will eventually, that will be a debt exclusion, not an override.
Now, she made a very good point that I didn't make, and that is that the debt exclusion for the school project is reimbursed 60% by the Massachusetts School Building Authority. So the number is $500,000, but 60% of that is sent back by the state, and that money is then used to service the debt. So.
I heard it mumbling in the background here. John Brooks, by the way. Mumbling in the background here. It won't come back this year. It will not come back this year. Your tax rate will increase, and then it will come back on the cherry sheet, and generally speaking, it comes back as free cash.
Right. Right.
And then it can be spent by the town, there's priority at any town meeting for the school or anything else in town.
Right. It'll come back during the year, and it'll be certified as free cash. And true.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay. Thank you very much for your patience, but the financial status of the town is very important, and so it was something that they requested, and we decided it was something we would put on the agenda. Next up, we have John Brooks for the Board of Assessors, running a 3-year term.
You can clap after we get through with this mess. I'm John Brooks, live on Baldwinville Road. Most of you know who I am. I'm running for the Board of Assessors. I filled in a 1-year term, and now I've decided to run for the 3-year term. Those of you that don't know me, I spent 20-odd years as a member of the Board of Assessors 10 years ago. The Board of Assessors are a very important part of this town. The arguments that we're using right now go back many years, over a lot of people and a lot of mistakes. I don't think that it's time to spend a lot of time arguing the point about how we got into this mess. I think it was pretty well spelled out in that presentation. That was an excellent presentation. I did not see it because I did not go to the town meeting. So I guess that means I can't complain about anything that happens in town, right? Go ahead with questions. I'll answer what I can, and as long as Luanne is still here, yeah. As long as she's still here, I can answer pretty near anything. In case you haven't noticed, she's the brains behind the assessor's office. And she's doing a real good job, and she's doing it without enough help. We need some more help. Go ahead, any questions?
Oh, actually, Mr. Brooks. Hi, Tom Benoit, Gristmill Crossing.
Again?
Yes, I know, I'm sorry, I'm new to the game and I'm learning. You might not be the best person to answer this question, but maybe you can. I am a little concerned. I think it's great that we have some options about how to cut costs, one of which, selling liens, selling town-owned property. I get a little nervous that maybe the reason we have bad data is because over the last few years we've cut our town employees. So I sometimes I'm wondering if this was a mess of our own making, that we've asked the financial department to do a level of work that they're unable to do with the cuts in their budget cuts. So I'm worried that here again we're combining jobs. I think it's the treasurer and the collector, and asking one person to do the job of two people. I'm wondering if our bad data is part of a result of us not giving our town employees the money they need to do to run our town.
You're right, you're asking the wrong person. You got a few wannabe selectmen and a few regular selectmen sitting around here. I think you better ask them.
Well, the reason I asked you, because you made a comment about Luanne having to do the job of two people, and I think that every single department has had to do the job of multiple people. And I just think, I don't want to pay more taxes either, but I feel like, the emperor has no clothes. Like,
I'm going to let that one go to the selectmen. If you haven't answered that question 100 times, you're going to. But there's no department that I know of that's overstaffed right now. We've all cut our budgets and cut our people to the point where we're just barely getting by.
Thank you.
Okay, a 3-year term on Light and Water Commission, David Smart.
Oh.
Good evening. Welcome to Canada's Night at Kamaloht. I thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Royer, for hosting this event. My name is David Smart. This is my second attempt in a process that our form of government has us vote to choose who will represent us and respectfully oversee our interests of Templeton's municipal light and water plant's future business. We moved here in 1970 after my father retired from the U.S. Army. I have lived in Templeton all of my adult life. Judy and I married in 1978 and raised 4 children. We have 9 grandchildren. I graduated from the Narragansett Regional School District in 1977. I furthered my education in automotive, electrical, and electronics. I have owned and operated my own auto repair business since 1996. I also graduated from the Enterprise Center for Business in '96. I have trained in the use of oscilloscopes, computers, scanners, multimeter, wiring schematics, studied waveforms, and many other electrical related areas. My purpose in being a commissioner is to give Templeton Light and Water a better representative on the commission to serve and protect our people's interests. After working with the water department on many water main breaks, it was clear to me that the water department was in a reaction mode and had no clear vision into the future. Their poor finances proved that to me.
I currently serve on the Templeton's Highway Department as an equipment operator and laborer for over 3 years. I have advanced to a 2A hydraulics license holder. I have trained in bucket truck operation, trench work safety, chainsaw tree removal, and highway work zone safety applications. All these things are related to the commission I seek to represent for you. I feel I am more qualified to do this for you and will bring more to this commission. With your important votes, I will move to require a more law-abiding general manager and commission to create an open and receptive environment for the public to rely on. I will help to create a more customer-friendly approach to meetings and encourage public participation. I will move to require videotaped meetings to be broadcast on local TV. I feel if meetings are open to the public, they should be broadcast for them also. Low income and handicapped should be given a better rate as all other electric providers now offer. We all as ratepayers should have the right to solar and other rebates now not offered to any customers in Templeton Municipal Light and Water. After being overcharged for many years to be a customer, our customer charge was recently lowered 25% from $4 to $3 per month. We were also told our rates were not going up. You should feel lied to and taken advantage of, as they said one thing and did another. To date, even the water customer charge doubled. No plans are in place for water pipe replacements or main repairs of any kind. They're still in reaction mode, needs to be changed. I look forward to serving you, and I will be a team player to move Templeton Municipal Light and Water in the direction it should have been all along. When John Adams wrote the world's first Massachusetts Constitution, he gave us the duty to vote and be the jury. The heart and lungs of our democracy, your vote gives the Commission the justice to run the department by the rule of law. We should want it only that way. Please vote your heart and vote smart. Please join over 600 who voted for me last time I ran. Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions for Davis? Seeing none. Thank you. Good luck.
5-year term for Planning Board, Dennis Rich.
Good evening, my name is Dennis Rich, and I'm running for re-election to the planning board. I've currently served for a little over 8 years now on the planning board. Would like to- I've currently served for a little over 8 years on the planning board, and I'm seeking your vote to enable me to go back and serve another additional 5 years if possible. I was born, raised, and educated in the town of Templeton. I lived most of my life in the town. I currently live on South Road with my wife. In my personal life, after school, I went into nursing.